hockey. Yeah.
My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
It is Judd's Hockey Show. It is Judd. It is AJ. It is Jessi Pierce. And the regular season is done. The playoffs are done. We are into the offseason, which should be extremely exciting as far as what's going to transpire. Draft is next, which the Wild obviously doesn't have a first-round pick, so that's not as exciting for the Wild. But free agency, which should be very interesting, and trades will start around July 1st. So, but let's reflect for a second, guys, because with Florida now going back-to-back, beat the Oilers in 7 games last season, beat the Oilers in 6 games, with Game 6 being a rout last night in Florida. I got a question for you. Well, I'll start with this. The Florida Panthers, in going back-to-back over the last 2 hockey seasons, have now played 210 games, okay? So they played 82, obviously. Last season, they played 24 in the playoffs. This season, they played 22. The Wild in the last 2 years has played 82, and 670 games. So, like, when you put everything together in the big stew of where Florida is, hell, in some cases, where the Oilers are as far as playoff runs go, and where the Wild is right now, Jessi, where do you put the Wild as far as what they are trying to do here compared to what the successful teams are presently doing?
It's tough to say because I still go back, and we talked about this last year with Florida. You look at Florida, and it is such a weird mix, which I think is the vision that Bill Guerin does have for this team. You have a couple superstars, you've got some depth, you're trying to make the moves. However, there's that mentality. We've started talking about that in the past couple of weeks on this show, is it doesn't feel like you have the players with the right mentality, the right guys to switch it on in the playoffs, because we've seen that. We haven't seen that come to fruition. Even the guys you're going and getting in trade, Gus Nyquist, where was that mentality to switch it on? I mean, the players that Florida adds, and not just at the deadline, but even adding Nate Schmidt, who had a phenomenal playoff run, I thought, for an older guy, a veteran presence, for him to play his part. Minnesota hasn't made the right move. So there's still, Bill Guerin has his 5-year timeline. Watching the Florida Panthers, watching Edmonton, and watching some of these other teams too, you're more than 5 years out, I think, until I can see him make the appropriate moves to really get those guys that will turn it on in the playoffs. It concerns me a little bit, because that's what Florida did. Going back to when they got Matthew Tkachuk in 2022 and how they've made these moves where they were questionable. At that time, it was Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar, who were very big pieces of the successful Panthers team. And you're getting Matthew Tkachuk. You're kind of like, well, that's weird. Well, it works, right? Like, Bill Guerin has yet to make moves that work. And I think that's the biggest problem for me. So they're further than 5 years. I'm sorry.
I would disagree with that a little bit, just because I feel like you can have a lot of change, like even over a summer. Like, they could add a piece or two here this summer, or make a certain trade that we just really see come out of left field, and it's like, okay, that kind of changes the shape. And like, I think I would agree. I don't know if they're within 3 years, if they make a big move, like, that could drop them in like the 4-year range. Like, I don't know. But as of right now, I agree. I just think there can be a lot that changes over the next like 2 off seasons. That's like, okay, they're taking things a little bit more seriously. But watching the Florida Panthers like hoist the Stanley Cup, and them TNT do all the the celebration interviews, the big theme, and I think Jessi actually just touched on this, but it's like the intangible locker room mood, like the togetherness that kept being a reoccurring theme. And I just don't think the Wild have that. And I don't even think they're anywhere close. Coaching wise, Paul Maurice is a different animal. Like, he knows how to rally a room. He knows how to motivate. He knows how to adjust mid-series when needed. If you look at it, they had, I think, a point more than the Wild in the regular series, or in the regular season. They finished with 98, third in the Atlantic. And I think, myself including a lot of others, were like, okay, this isn't going to be like a valiant defense of the reigning champs. Like, they're going to maybe put up a fight, but they might get out in 1-2 rounds. They kind of changed their identity altogether to find like a different gear and say, we are a juggernaut now. We're a postseason threat, and we're going to win, and we're going to win, and we're going to win, and then we're going to hoist the cup. I just don't know the Wild have necessarily any of those tools in their bag to where they can, one, find an identity close to that, or two, you kind of get through the season like they did. And that was something the Wild, I think, did similar to the Panthers. Like, and that might be the only similarity, which is they battled a lot of injuries and then just kind of struggled getting into the postseason. But then the difference there between one franchise and another is the Wild just don't have that other animal inside of them. The Panthers were a completely different team, and they were deadly all postseason.
I think the interesting thing about the Panthers, though, is the thing that we kept hearing last night was, and it's been talked about throughout the playoffs, though, is about like the locker room and the love in the locker room and the guys' love. And I think when they say that, they're not really telling the story because, yes, the locker room is tight. I mean, the Wild has some guys that are tight. They can all be found at the Spurgeons on Christmas Eve, and they can all be found at the Spurgeons on Thanksgiving. Being tight is not the, like loving each other as people is not the important thing here. It's the chemistry. Like, that's the word I would use. The chemistry in that room and the leaders who control that room. This is what the Wild completely lacks. The leaders who control, like, I don't care if you hang out together at somebody's house or not. What I care about is what's the room like, right, you guys? And when you talk about Barkov, who's the ultimate, he feels like the quiet, but he's just he's a great player, very stable. But then, Jessi, to your point, Tkachuk comes in, and he's fiery. And do you think he puts up with any garbage? Absolutely not. The other thing that I loved is, and don't forget too, Paul Maurice walked away from the Jets job because he's like, I've done as much as I can do here. This thing's dysfunctional. I'm out. But then he gets plopped into a perfect situation with, again, the chemistry. And I think that's what, just from a starting point. So I don't think the Wild room's a bad room. Because we talked about this, I think it was last week. It was at one time a bad room. Bill Guerin cleaned up the bad room part of it. But I also don't think it has anyone I don't think it has a real honest leadership group. And when you look at the deadline, you go out and get Seth Jones, who had been on a very dysfunctional, bad Chicago team, and Brad Marchand, who, again, was traded for a conditional 2027 second round pick. That's what Boston got back for a guy that helped the Panthers, and who, by the way, had been a captain and now didn't even wear a letter. It's the infrastructure, and then on top of that, you've got guys that are strong-willed. And I did love the fact that the Panthers flat out said, and this is the smart play, is we don't care if we're in first place, second place, or third place. We're good enough to make the playoffs, so we know that, right? But we're going to make it. And once we do, and then Tkachuk comes back from, I mean, my God, the injury for him was disgusting. It was his adductor was off the bone, and he had a groin problem besides that. I looked it up, you guys. An adductor is a group of muscles that go from the pelvic bone to the inner thigh and knee, and it came off the bone.
Oh.
And this dude came back and played. Thank you very much, World Cup or four nations. I'd like to thank the 4 nations for doing that to him. But anyway, like, I think, Jessi, that's where it's great to talk about like the love and the sharing, and the Panthers do a great job of that. But I think the most important thing is, like, to your point, look at who's in that room and who controls that room. And I do think that the Tkachuk trade is directly where you can trace how the tone was set there. And the Wild needs its version. I don't know who or when or how you get it, but it needs its Matthew Tkachuk type of guy, because that's what a leader can do.
And to Age's point, maybe that does start this year. Maybe you do make that right signing. I mean, I forget, that's so many years ago now, but when Matthew Tkachuk told the Calgary Flames he wasn't going to re-sign, I forget where he was at in his career. He was obviously younger. He was a very good big piece of Calgary. I do know that. But I don't recall the players available at that time. I don't know where he ranked in that. So it doesn't have to be, the Mitch Marner. It doesn't have to be that big splash. It has to be the right piece, to your guys' point, right? Like, that's the thing. I love that Edmonton doesn't win, and I've said this before, because now I can tell Bill Guerin, this is what I was talking about. You look at the Florida Panthers, even last year when they won, I wouldn't say they had these phenomenal superstars necessarily. This year it's different because they won the cup and those players' names are elevated in the NHL. They're elevated around the league, right? Like, they didn't have the Connor McDavid. They didn't have the Leon Draisaitl. They had every other piece on every other line that made them phenomenal. That third line, as we've talked about for Florida, was their best line, arguably. Not to mention they had all these players that were capable of shutting down McDavid and Draisaitl. So, to my point, Bill Guerin, this is why you can't spend all of your money on these one players. That's why I don't want to go get a Sam Bennett and waste all this money when you're locking it up in him and Kirill Kaprizov, and you have nothing else to fill up your fourth line. Then you have the fourth line has been a problem. You need to find those right players. And yeah, it starts with making the right move this summer. Again, doesn't have to be the superstar, big name, best player. It has to be the right piece. And I need a player that has the right mentality. We go back to the locker room culture. Yes, they get along. And yes, it is so much more cohesive than what I had seen in the Parise Suter era, without question. It feels good. The guys like each other. The guys do like being a part of that room. But there's that Minnesota niceness to it. Okay, you're fine with being done. It doesn't have that hunger sometimes. So you need to find the players that are willing to bite back. We've talked about it before. Max Zuccarello is maybe one of those guys in the rooms that will kind of bite back and snip and say things. You need more of that. You need to have it, because it's not a friendship contest. It's not who's the most well-liked. It's who is going to bring out the best in you to go win a Stanley Cup. And right now, that's again why I think the Wild are so far away. It's not necessarily a lack of talent. It's a lack of hunger, it feels.
And the coach can't do all of that. So that's the thing too. And I think Matthew Tkachuk is a great teammate, a great player, but when push comes to shove, he can be an a-hole. And that's what you need. And by that, I do not mean a guy who is a selfish guy. I don't mean a guy who is checking out his how much time was I on the ice, during the break after the second period because my ice time is not sufficient, so I'm an a-hole. I'm talking about a guy who's respected. That's the thing, and they're hard to find. I would argue that is as important. If we were to talk about, okay, you could get that player or Marner this offseason, I'm taking that player every time. Marner is a very talented, fun player to watch, but that is the dynamic that the Wild lacks. And the problem too is Ryan Reeves can't be that guy. He doesn't play enough. He's not going to do enough.
Yeah.
He's a tough guy, but he is not the type of guy you can't say, okay, watch Ryan Reeves. He's going to play on the fourth line, but he does a lot. They tried, it felt like when they signed Maroon a couple of years ago, but he was sort of at the end there, again, tailed off. You need to find a guy like this in the prime of his career, or still a second line guy or a first line guy. And again, I know it's tough, but I personally value that more than, to your point, Jess, just get the superstar. If you can get the superstar, the Wild has one. The Wild has a superstar. What they need now is they need somebody who they thought mistakenly for a long time Mikko Koivu was. They thought that Koivu was that guy because he's stoic and blah, blah, blah. And Barkov might be a little bit more like that, but the Wild needs someone who, if they lose their last game before Christmas break, says, you know what, boys, we ain't going to Spurgees. We're going to skate.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a jerk, but I'm fine. But that's what you need.
If we talked about, I think I said that because I said Nathan McKinnon, right? He's a guy I don't want to piss off. He's a captain, he's a leader, and he's got skill. And you're right. You need to find that correct balance, because Connor McDavid isn't intimidating me, right? If he, I'm not seeing him getting gristled. Leon Draisaitl on the other hand, I think is probably much more intimidating as far as getting that motivation and whatnot. But maybe that's part of the problem in Edmonton too, is you don't have that voice. And that's why you weren't able to regroup. And that's why you fell apart for 3 straight games in the Stanley Cup final again. You don't have somebody that's not only skilled, but capable of bringing that out. And that's a rarity. It's not something that's just found every day, kind of like a number one center. It's not something that's just laying out willy-nilly. Otherwise, every team would have one. But that is, I think, paramount to success. It's such a blend, and that's what makes hockey so cool, I think. You can't just fill up your team with superstars, because that's not how the game of hockey is played. It's not like basketball. It's not like football, where you need your 1 or 2, 3 really good players and you're going to go and destroy everybody. No, you have to have that team chemistry. You have to have those gritty fourth liners. You need a little bit of everything. So that's why Minnesota, they have their work cut out for them, but I think there are little pieces. So you're right. Going back to the initial question, maybe 5 years is a bit egregious, but it's the work starts now. Like you need
Yeah.
to, you have some pieces, the work starts now.
Yep.
And they also made it work with guys that I think are less than, if that makes sense. Like if you 4 years ago told Wild fans, hey, Dmitry Kulikov is going to win back-to-back Stanley Cup, I don't think anybody would believe it.
Right.
But here he is on a Florida team playing a certain role, playing a certain style that fits him. And frankly, I thought he played pretty darn decent for like what I expected out of Dmitry. Like, don't get me wrong, he's not gonna he wasn't like a standout Aaron Ekblad type of guy, but he, for what his role was, the entire series was like, okay, you know what? He's not a liability. He's doing really good stuff on the back end for the Panthers. Like it's about utilizing even the guys that you would think are just more fillers. And to Jesse's point, you have to spread out the cap space. And I know there's rumors now that it's going to go up to like north of that 118 million that it's projected to go through over the next however many years. But you still are going to have those guys that you think, you know, they deserve to be a third or a fourth? Like that's about their ceiling. They're still making it work with those style of guys. And that's where I think the Wild also are a massive misstep, because it's just, they have these guys. And frankly, it feels like a fourth line, third line guy could very well be a top 6 guy for the Wild. Whereas for Florida, you're in a box, here's your role, you're going to do it, and you're going to do it well. Same thing that you've seen all postseason long, and they are reaping the rewards of that. So
absolutely. Hey, but before we pivot a little bit here, want to talk about our friends at Neos Elite Performance. If you are if you were a golfer and you love to golf, and now guess what? The aches and pains of life have gotten to you and are keeping you off the course, or basketball. The experts at Neos Elite Performance are going to help you get through that with their cutting-edge regenerative medicine and cellular IV therapy that's designed to get you going again without invasive procedures. They are going to come to your home. You do not have to go to a doctor's or the hospital. Neos is going to help get you back on the golf course or the basketball court by coming to you to get that pain to stop your suffering. So you're going to restore your function and get back to doing what you love. Also, if you reference our show PD, so the flagship show, Purple Daily, get $500 off a cellular IV therapy treatment. That's right, $500 off a cellular IV therapy treatment. No surgery, no downtime, just results. Neoselite.com, Neos Elite.com. And Age, we have a big soccer event coming to our town here. Why don't you tell us about the CONCACAF Cup coming to US Bank Stadium?
Yeah, this past weekend kicked off for US. It was like Mighty Ducks 2, where they faced Trinidad and Tobago at Parade Ice Gardens. Some of the best hockey jerseys I've ever seen. But it was like that, where USA was just kind of in control. I think it was a 5-0 final for Team USA. They're looking in Group D to kind of take the top spot there and progress in the CONCACAF Gold Cup, where actually later this month, June 29th, quarterfinals coming to US Bank Stadium. It's going to be a can't miss event for anybody that's a soccer fan. And plus, it's that time of the year where it's like now football still really hasn't gotten going on. Baseball's in the swing of things, but maybe you want to change things up. CONCACAF Gold Cup could be the way to go. One ticket gets you into both games for that day. So there's going to be 2 quarterfinal games going on. Ticketmaster is the place to find your tickets, or for more info, you're going to want to go online to goldcup.org/tickets. That's June 29th in Minneapolis at the US Bank Stadium. You're really not going to want to miss this if you're a big soccer fanatic, or you're just kind of trying to look to get into the game of soccer. It's kind of the place to be. And frankly, similar to World Juniors coming up later this year, it's one of those events that it rarely comes around, and it could be a good warm-up for a World Cup in 2026. So June 29th in US Bank Stadium, goldcup.com or .org/tickets.
All right. So as we've been discussing these, what the Panthers have and what possibly the Wild does not have, Jess, I've been putting together sort of a list. Okay, so the ingredients of a championship team, or at least the ingredients that the Panthers have.
I should
and
get
in
my
doing
chef hat.
that,
We should do that. Just make
I've
it
been
real. Yeah,
I like it.
thank
Oh,
you.
a big chef hat too.
Yeah.
I love those big chef hats. That's a good point.
Big
That's a
hat's funny.
good- Yes, always funny. So I've got 4 things here, and there's probably more, but like when you look at what the Panthers have done, the things that I have written down just off the top of my head during our discussion: a true leader, or a group. Barkov, Kachuk. I mean, guys that basically control the room so the coach doesn't have to. Pieces to what AJ was saying, pieces that fit then. Like Kulikov's on championship teams because he's a piece that fits. Uh, the Wild feels like it gets guys and they use them, throw them in, but I don't know that there's a philosophy of, okay, this piece fits, and not just on the ice, but also off the ice as far as what the acceptance of the role is going to be. My next is a coach that can conduct things. And this is a hard thing, but like a coach that's a conductor. So the coach doesn't have to like lead the team, but the coach has to know the right buttons to push at times, which Paul Maurice 100% does. That coach has to be smart. That coach has to pick his spots, but that coach can play a very important role because I think that we've seen that these 2 Stanley Cup championships for the Panthers, Paul Maurice has been very important. And then the last thing, and this is where the Oilers fall woefully short, I think, and where the Panthers pass the test, goaltending. Because, you can't have, I forget, I think it was on the TNT postgame show last night, but you can't have going into game, 5 of the Stanley Cup final, say, okay, you know what? Our backup played so well in relief that he's going to start and we're going to try to ride the backup. Oh, no, we're not. We're going to go back to Skinner. So as far as those 4 things go, leadership, pieces that fit, the right coach to conduct it, and goaltending. Jessi, how many of those would you say that the Wild is even remotely close to having in place? And I guess you could sort of throw on a star player because, in fairness, Kaprizov's presence is incredibly important, and the Wild has that.
And Matt Boldy, I think, is there. I mean, I still like to consider him in kind of that star contention. He's still growing. He's still young. I think that's fair. Brock Faber in his own right as well. Yep. I'm feeling comfortable with the starting goaltending. As we've discussed, backup situation is still a little iffy for me, depending on what Jesper Wallstedt does. I would feel so much better if they go get a short-term veteran goalie that can do something. Not even Kelvin Pickard, even somebody that can just come in, I guess, like that. Like he did fine. I will say this to credit. Stuart Skinner, yes, terrible, but it was everybody in front of him also. Right? Like, I mean, they could not stop the rush. The forechecking of the Florida Panthers was phenomenal.
Fair.
Like, I salivated over that. You had your it just kept coming in waves. It was incredible to watch. So I can't even blame that. Like, and Sergei Bobrovsky didn't have to be that brilliant all the time either because the puck was down on the other end majority. So credit to that. But goaltending, I feel good. Leadership, again, it's tough because I do think what Foligno and what Spurgeon can bring is important. And then you have Kirill kind of being that stoic, as you'd mentioned, Judd, leader who shows it with his talent. Maybe you got to take it from Spurge. You got to put it on somebody else, right? I'm fine with Foligno keeping his A because he has that kind of fun-loving, boisterous, but maybe you've got to switch that up. You've got 3 of 5. You listed 5 ingredients, right?
Yes, with star players, and
yes,
I agree with you.
3 of 5, I think, which isn't going to bake well, right?
Coach, right?
Try to be like EJ. Coach, I think John Hines has some of what Paul Maurice has. I truly do, right? Like we just mentioned the forechecking. I think John Hines is trying to get that aggressive run and gun north to south Minnesota Wild going. He doesn't have the players to utilize it as effectively as Paul Maurice does. So I think that is there. And we've seen what John Hines has done over the past years. Again, I still don't know that we give him enough credit. There are some lapses of judgment. Yes. And again, some of that makes me question who's in charge of the lineup card, who is actually making those decisions. Is it him or is it coming from above? I mean, right. I think that's a fair question sometimes.
I like it.
I don't hate John Hines in his role. I would give him a half a star instead of a full star, but I think he just doesn't have the team. I'm more focused on the roster and seeing where that can lead. I think John Hines could do it with the capable right players because I think he does press a lot of the right buttons to go. So yeah, you're gonna get an unfinished cake at this point. But again, that's why summer is so imperative, right? Like I think it's so important. The other thing I want to make note of for the Florida Panthers, They played their young guys. They play the guys that they drafted in the first round. You've got Anton Lundell, right? You've got Barkov was a first round pick. Like they have players that they drafted in the first round now finally coming to fruition, to blooming, unlike my garden does out here. But that's important. I think you have to have belief in the prospects that you are getting. We've talked about that at length as well. Like play the guys, get them into your system, get them to know that, so you can go back and point to your roster and say, see, this is why we did draft him first round 2020. This is why we did do this. Now, again, that's going to be hard considering there's no first round for Minnesota, yada, yada. But I think that's also important. I mean, you have a lot of these guys on this roster are in their prime and have been with the organization since they were drafted. And I think that says a lot about the team too.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this, just going back to a point that you made. Do you guys, because I do agree with this a little bit, but do you really think, because I'm curious as to your thoughts, taking the C off of Spurgeon and moving it to somebody else, do you think that moves the needle for the locker room that much?
Not unless you have a guy who deserves the C who comes in. And so, no, but in fairness to what the predicament now, and this is not ideal, I'm not endorsing it, but I will say this, and this sort of bolsters Jesse's point, where 5 years is aggressive, but I get what you're saying, Jess, is you also can't change this in before opening night. Like if you strip Spurgeon of the C, and I don't know, you bring in Tavares, who was, captain for a lengthy period of time in Toronto. That's a building block move. But, you can't become the Florida Panthers in 3 months.
No.
So I think what we're all talking about here too is how do you get there? Like not how do you ascend there immediately? And, just that's why 5 years is a lot, but it is also it's not realistic to base this discussion on how can the Wild show up for training camp and be the Panthers, because it's a cultural thing too. Like it's a huge cultural thing. And so do I think stripping Spurgeon of the C right now fixes things? Absolutely not. Do I think the Wild's chemistry, as far as what I want from a team that's going to make a playoff run, which they have not done, is right? No, I do not. So that's sort of a convoluted way of saying, I get your point, Age. I agree with your point, but I also don't think the Wild is at the right place either with what they're doing.
I'm going to say this very gently. You need to put the C on somebody that they respect. I'm not saying that this team does not respect Jared Spurgeon. That's not what I mean.
There's no gentle way to say that.
That's not but I'm not meaning it in a disrespectful way, because I think there's a ton of respect for Jared Spurgeon. And I think the players in that locker room would absolutely recognize, we did this to him. He's not the captain. There is a huge amount of respect for Spurge as a person and as a player and everything. But it's not Tavares. Tavares comes in that room and I think of everybody sitting up straight, right? You have Taze comes in that room. You have, again, I go back to Nathan McKinnon, where it's like, I'm going to do whatever this man says because I'm intimidated a little bit. I think that's the better word. There's a lack of intimidation from Jared Spurgeon. There's a huge amount of respect, but there's a lack of intimidation. If you put that C on somebody that can intimidate and motivate in that right way, and I know I'm beating that horse, but that to me is the biggest thing that's missing in that room. Because I like that room. I like the way that players feel welcomed right away. I think that's important, yada, yada there. But there's an intimidation factor that also needs to be had. These are big boys. You guys are grown-ups. You can handle it. Have somebody in there that you are a little fearful of upsetting or disappointing, right? And I think that's the piece that Spurge is missing wearing that C. So I think that's where you move. And again, there's nobody in that locker room right now that I think warrants that has that intimidating factor, that has something where, oh, no, we can't get on his bad side or he's going to chew us out and make us bag skate, whatever it might be. You don't have that. So again, maybe that's why that's going to be a component, I think, in a player that you're seeking in free agency or trade.
Just to stay on it, if we're talking about this here and we can recognize that's sort of the leadership the Wild need, I would imagine Bill Guerin, Wild front office are able to identify that too. Jared Spurgeon's an adult. They can sit him down and be like, hey, we need you to be more of an a-hole. You can still be a fun, lovable guy at times.
He doesn't have it in him.
You just don't think he has it at all?
No. And I don't think you can also, it doesn't need to be, you can't, my whole thing about sports too is this. You can't say, I am changing my demeanor, and so you're going to respect that.
Yeah.
I think if Jared Spurgeon tried to become a tough guy, it would actually hurt him a lot. Like,
Okay.
players would be like, this isn't you. I was just having turkey. It was really good at your house last Thanksgiving, and now you're... No, it needs to be... Jesse's exactly right. It needs to be somebody... It needs to be somebody who can get your attention. And
I just
again,
feel like they're... I just feel like they're not going to take the C off. Like this, the franchise does not seem like a franchise that has the nuts, the cojones.
But he's almost done.
Right.
But he's almost done.
That sends a strong message. You strip the
Yes.
C. I mean, I remember when Winnipeg did it to Blake Wheeler, who Blake Wheeler, I think, does exude a captain, in my opinion. I was shocked to see it for that reason, mostly.
Weird situation there. I still don't know what happened.
Weird. I still don't. But like, I mean, you do that rocks the world, right? Like, holy cow! Like, why are you taking this away? And I think that would. So I mean, it would send a strong message into the fan base. The irony is that if I think about all those pieces, Bill Guerin to me is a captain, right? Like, he's welcoming, but he's got that I don't want to piss you off, and I'm going to tell you when I'm pissed off. And it's like, that is the type of guy that you need. And again, even thinking of the top players on free agency, those aren't it. Like, they're not it either there. So you're going to have to make a trade. But yeah, you need somebody that walks into the room and commands you to play better. And that's okay. And that's okay that that's not Spurge too. That's not, again, I think to Judd's point, it's not taking anything away from him. That's just not who he is. And that's fine. But you got to figure it out.
And the interesting thing, though, too, in fairness, about the Panthers is this. Like, Barkov, to me, strikes me as the stoic captain. Like, he's the captain. He leads through example. Like, he's very much a captain that the Wild would have relished, right? But then you add the Tkachuk piece, and he comes in, and he is, one, he's a very good player. And second of all, do not screw around on that dude's time. But then when it's time to have fun, like, so here's the fine line. I'm going to say something. I don't mean to try to be a smartass here, but the fine line is this. I know it's 2025 and we all like to be nicer now and blah, blah, blah. But you know what I love about Matthew Tkachuk and his family? I could see them having a Panthers Christmas dinner at the local bar.
Yeah.
Like, that's the Tkachuks. Like, this is
Hedgie's pizza.
Yeah, and this is the hockey thing, and this is just, to your point, about Bill Guerin. Like, that's Bill Guerin.
Yeah.
And I know he tries to bring in guys, but yeah, it's a fine line here. But I do think it's interesting when you go down, like, okay, what's the difference just off the ice, too? What's the difference between this team that's done it twice now and a lot of teams? This is not to just pick on the Wild. It's a lot of teams aren't close. But, like, that's it. And that's where there's just a wide gap in why, Kulikov, why is he in Florida being so successful? Because he's a piece of the puzzle that's slotted in right. Mm-hmm. And, Jessi, I love your point, too. You got to play the kids. Like Zeev Bouillon, scratching him in the playoffs, to me, did you no good. Mm-hmm. Like, if John Merrill was a really good player and he had been hurt and came back, okay, that's a definite conversation. You traded a Hall for Juracek, who came here, played okay in 6 games.
Yeah.
Came back here, never played, and so this is also where there has to be some decisions made about what's your structure going forward. And I would say it's not to reward old fogies who you like by playing them. I would say it's to develop your team. And so, yeah, it feels like there's just a lot of things, not just from the players' standpoint. It feels like there's a lot of things on the Wild list that need to improve and improve quickly as far as the culture goes, because they don't feel close to me to being there yet, and they should be closer.
Blue collar and talent, right? Like, the Tkachuks to me are so blue collar. Like, that's their family, and that's we love that extends to everybody, even Brady.
RV,
I mean, the way they
driving
play.
across the country.
Yes, yeah, my type of people.
Oh, I know.
Right. I agree. I think it's so great. So yeah, I mean, maybe there is a lack of that because I do look in the Wild locker room, 3-4 maybe blue collar guys, and the rest of them are kind of probably had it a little bit smoother sailing. So yeah, maybe that's a part of it too. Just that grittiness. I've talked about that grittiness
You're right.
needing, right? Like that's kind of it's grit first. There hasn't been grit first in this organization for
They
decades.
tried with that one, right? I think they used that slogan at one point, didn't they? Grit first.
Yeah.
It was like 2 years ago. They didn't make it. Yeah.
I think that was the playoff motto, was it not?
Because the playoff motto was grit first, and everybody, and it was mocked by the Dallas Stars immediately.
Yeah.
And like
That being said, then they followed that up the next year, and granted, they have had way more success, but they had like the whole AI, the playoff AI thing.
yeah, I mean,
And
Dallas
that, and then they,
faltered
oh
a
god, it was
lot.
terrible.
It's kind of fun to see them downfall a little bit. Like I just have to laugh. Like I was so behind them, and now
You
I'm
like them.
yeah. Well, now they're downfall. I like winners. Once you stop
You are
being like a
such a-
winning
you are
team, then
such
I'm
a
done with you. Like
You're
I'm moving
bandwagon.
on. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like
Bandwagon.
winners. It's fine.
Oh, you're.
I'm a big Panthers fan.
Yes,
the
Age.
Panthers did it, just to kind of piggyback off the young guy point. Them playing Anton Lundell. This is his 4th season.
Yeah.
Like he was drafted, I think 3 picks behind Marco Rossi,
Yep.
4 picks behind Marco Rossi. And I want to say for the discussions out there that are like, oh, they should have taken. They simply shouldn't have. Like on draft night, the write-ups were completely different. And granted, I think that there's probably still a higher ceiling for what you're seeing with Marco Rossi. Like Lundell's probably more of like a pro-ready center, and we've seen that. He's played 4 seasons. That being said, this is his best season out of the 4 with 45 points. He's gone 44, 33, 35, 45. So it's not like he is like a number 1 bona fide center by any means, but he's, I think, your prototypical Swiss center or Finnish center, which is like blue collar, playmaker, stoic. Like he kind of plays a quiet game, but he also can be somewhat of a brute if needed, blah, blah, blah. He's had 4 seasons under his belt, and they're trusting him. And he's worked, I think, a lot because he was not the greatest of face-off guys before. Past 2 seasons, I think he's been at like 55 or 54% on the dot. So they clearly have trusted him. And I think that's the biggest thing, which is they have trusted a young guy like him to take a step and work on their game and better himself to be a bigger role in the lineup. I'm not sure right now, removed a month and a half or so from seeing Zeev Buium get scratched, Marco Rossi demoted to the 4th line, Liam Ogren just flat out not getting time. And granted, that might be another conversation because maybe they're seeing something that we all don't as to why he's not getting any shot whatsoever, but they clearly just don't have a soft spot in their hearts for the young guys that they've drafted and that they seem to have coveted all this time, and that, you know, people in the media have talked about, oh, they're such good prospects. They just don't have that sort of support for them right now. And I don't know, maybe I'm just discovering that might be what I think is the biggest flaw with the Wild, is that they're not willing to they're not willing to ask out the girl at the bar. They're not even willing to go over and talk to them and find out if there's any, fire there. They're just like, I'm going to play it safe and just kind of throw out some shots on Tinder or something, instead of actually approaching the girl at the bar. Honey, can I buy you a drink type of thing? It's like, no, I'm just going to swipe, and hopefully I get something back with this 33-year-old left winger.
It's the acceptance of mediocrity, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just what it is. Like, okay, we're fine with just grabbing this guy, and you're not deploying the guys in the right way. Marco Rossi, you're not deploying him in the right way, because you could argue, yes, you put a lot of faith and trust in him for a while, and then you got scared and pulled back, right? And you're like,
Right.
okay, never mind, we're not fully there. You don't want to see them make the mistakes. You'd rather have them be perfect, which, as every parent knows, you can't. You got to let them make the mistakes. You got to let them screw up so you can learn and grow from it and improve. And I think the Wild seem to be very timid in regard to that. They'd rather protect them and say, no, we don't want them coming after these young kids. We don't want them criticizing our draft and development. So we're just not going to let you see them. We're going to shelter them. We're going to helicopter parents.
And last thing too is, to be clear, it does not look like the Wild got the Rossi pick wrong too. Like it would be one thing if Lundell was winning cups and playing great and Marco was this flop. He was not a flop. You demoted him to the 4th line below Freddie Gaudreau. Not, Hartman was playing great. Like, it feels like the narrative now is, well, Hartman was playing too well not to promote him. And you were right about that. He was playing great. That's fantastic. I'd still try to trade him. But at the end of the day, that was not a Ryan Hartman Rossi conversation. That was That was a Freddie Gaudreau Rossi conversation. And Marco Rossi, whether you want to pay him or not, it's not like Judd Brackett missed the pick. And you basically pulled the rug out, which, by the way, I think also in the room itself, I think it raises eyebrows because you're like, what are we doing here? Like, this guy can score some points for us. We're playing the Golden Knights, and he's on the fourth line with these two guys. Well, they played really well. Come on, they played. You know what they did? They played better than they did in the regular season where they sucked. So anyway, all right, kids. So we're done. Back next week. Probably some conversation about. Could John Tavares, because we talked about this with AJ as well, Jessi, last week. John Tavares is looking like maybe more and more of an option as free agency approaches. Judd, Jessi, AJ, we'll see you later.